NOAA has just released its May 2018 Global Climate Report, and this video is going to summarize the main points of it. It turned out that May of 2018 was the fourth warmest May on record, with the average global temperature being 0.8 degrees centigrade above the 20th century average. There were just 2 pixels that were record cold in this map, whereas there's over 100 pixels that are record warm. That would indicate that we still have a warming planet. Let's compare first the land and ocean, that's there on the left, and you can see that the land was the 7th warmest and the ocean was the 4th warmest, which combined to make the whole planet to be the 4th warmest May on record. On the right we have the comparison of the northern and southern hemisphere, and the northern hemisphere was the 3rd warmest and the southern hemisphere was the 6th warmest May on record. That makes 401 consecutive months since the last time that we had a month that was below the 20th century average temperature. That was back in December of 1984. In a warming world, you would expect there to be more high temperature records set than low. And that's exactly what we have at the moment. In May, there were just over 8,000 record highs set, compared with just under 1,300 record lows. Year to date, we've had 46,000 record highs set, compared with 28,000 record lows. So that too says we have a warming planet. We'll take a look at our calendar. I've added in here that May 2018 is the 4th warmest, and you can see at the moment it's underperforming 2017. So that would put it probably about 5th place as the warmest years on record. However, I'm expecting the temperature to pick up towards the end of the year as El Nino kicks in. So we'll see what happens by the end of the year. Well, let's take a look at the upper atmosphere. We'll start with the lower troposphere, that's an altitude of about 4 kilometers, and compare the results from UAH and RSS. They rank it about 10th or 11th warmest May on record, but show a distinct warming trend of about 0.12 degrees centigrade per decade. Now this is the same data that many people claim show no warming trend whatsoever or even a cooling trend. But the researchers themselves are indicating there's a significant warming trend over this period. Next we go to the mid-troposphere, that's an altitude of about 7 kilometers. And both groups rank it about the 12th warmest May on record, and a warming trend that is less, but 0.08 degrees centigrade, as you might expect as it being higher in the atmosphere. Lastly, there's the stratosphere, which is an area that you would expect to be cooling, and it is. It's the 9th and 10th respectively coolest May on record, and it has a cooling trend of about 0.24 degrees centigrade per decade. When NOAA puts out its global report, it also puts out a report for the continental United States. And here on the left is the mean temperature percentiles, and you can see that there were large areas of the central part of the US that were showing at record high temperatures. Virtually none of the US was below normal. On the right we have the precipitation index, and you can see there was a fairly wet May for the east coast and a fairly dry May for the west coast and across the south. It's interesting to look at the drought index for the United States. You can see that we've had very dry conditions all across the south, up the west coast and along the northern tier states, even into New England. It's been extremely wet in Florida and up the east coast to the mid-Atlantic. Sea ice extent remains near all-time lows. Here in the northern hemisphere it's the 2nd lowest sea ice extent on record, and in the southern hemisphere it's the 3rd lowest sea ice extent on record. It looks as though we'll soon be having El Nino conditions. This is what the equator looked like in January of this year. Now compare it with this. You see there's a lot more warm water along that equatorial line, and this shows the beginning of an El Nino. They reckon it should be here by August or September. Last month there was a slight uptick in solar activity, particularly in the northern hemisphere, which is interesting because last time around it was the southern hemisphere that hung on longer for the cycle. So maybe this time it's going to be the northern hemisphere. But that still means that we're at least 18 months away from a solar minimum, and then 9 months to a year before we start into the next cycle. So let's summarize all of this. May 2018 was the fourth warmest May on record. It now marks 401 consecutive months with above average temperatures. And so neutral conditions prevail at the moment, but it looks as though we're heading towards an El Nino. So the warming will continue. Solar minimum is still about 18 months away, at least. Until next time, goodbye.